Welcome back to the Decent Garage. We are back on the ultimate American truck build. If you watched the last video on this truck, you'll remember we towed the chassis all the way down to Boerne, Texas, where Holden Bros Diesel is located, and we installed our brand new 12-valve P-pump motor with our G56 transmission. This thing turned out awesome. In today's video, we have a lot of little details to do before we can put the body on. So we're gonna try and accomplish all the brake lines, all the fuel lines, including our electronic fuel pump, the exhaust, as well as the transfer case and the drive lines, and probably a few other things, the fuel tank probably. So this will be perfect to try and get everything prepped to put the body on, and you guys are in luck, the body is completely done with paint. So after we do this, we can throw the body right on. So let's get started. This exhaust system is from Diamond Eye Performance. I've used their exhaust plenty in the past and I really like the quality of their product, especially how easy it is to install and the price. Alright, so we got our Diamond Eye 4-inch exhaust and we ran into an issue. So we got it all hung up here. Looks really good, nice and straight, which is what I like. Comes out right under the axle, goes back just a little bit, but the pipes that come with it to come up around the transfer case and then around Charlie's crossmember, and combined with a down pipe for a compound turbo setup that Holden Bros did, those pipes aren't going to work. So what we're going to do, we're going to leave this like this. I'll probably get it clamped up, and then after we do everything else, I'll throw it on the trailer, tow it to exhaust shop and have them bend something up for this part right here. So that's all she wrote on the exhaust for right now. Scratch that. We're gonna get this exhaust installed no matter what. So stay tuned till later in the video. It happens and it turns out great. This is a fully built NP205 transfer case built by Todd Gordon. He did a phenomenal job. Look how strong Kevin is. Something didn't quite look right with the mating surfaces, but we figured we'd just move on and come back to that later. So we are putting the rear, well actually all the brake lines in. The plan was to run a whole new line here, but we're just going to go check. I've got the original line in a storage unit, so we're going to go look at it, and if it's in good enough shape, we might just clean it up and reuse it, because I think it'll be better quality than making a line. So this is Kevin. You may recognize him from the last video. He said he wanted to come hang out today and work on the truck, and there's no way I'm going to turn down that offer. Kevin brought this sweet brake line flare tool that worked way better than the Harbor Freight one that I have. I'll throw a link to it and a few other tools that came in handy down in the description. So this line is too short. I'm gonna have to get a new one because it's supposed to come up into that bracket. Probably get one 6 inches longer so it can curve over. So we just got done building this piece and it looks awesome. It looks amazing. And as we said, this is the original piece that goes the whole length of the frame rail. Got it cleaned up, painted it. Actually looks really good. But not that good. So we're gonna build a whole new frame rail line just so it looks just as good. Shouldn't be too bad. Two tools that we got, this little thing, so these come in coils right there. You slide this tool on here. Kevin's gonna give a demonstration. And look at this. Well, don't do the whole thing. There we go. but it just straightens it perfectly. So that tool's been awesome. And then the other one to make some of the bends is this thing. It's basically like a, just leverages over that. It's like a little handheld pipe bender. So you can make any bends you want. So this should not be too hard to recreate. All right, well, Kevin's working on that brake line. I am putting in our fuel return line. Get going a little bit on the fuel system. So this shouldn't be bad at all. We got that main brake line in all the way down the fuel rail, back to our rear wheel anti-lock, I think is what it's called. So we don't have the clamps on it yet because I'm going to work with someone and get some, he makes some really cool clamps. But we're going to hang the tank. The tank's empty, and I'll probably have to move it when I come back to run the wiring harness and put those clamps on the brake line. So not a big deal when the tank's empty. But we're going to get the sump put in the tank, hang the tank, and then get the AirDog put in. There are no good aftermarket options for fuel tanks for these trucks, so we decided to clean up the original one. Look how strong Kevin is. I am putting our sump in the tank right here. Got our hole drilled. Kevin's working on the AirDog. We had some questions about how to mount it, and luckily someone I know filmed a great video on how to install one of these. So we went and referenced that, and it helped out a lot. I'll link that in the description below. So we're moving forward. Okay, so we got the AirDog placed here on the frame rail, but we are going to move it a little bit because we're just trying to figure out where we want to run the lines, how to run them. So we're actually going to scoot the AirDog all the way up here as far forward as we can. So then the feed line will run right along, right there, come through up in the frame rail and go up to the feed on the pump. And then the feed, feed to the AirDog will come right through here to the AirDog. So that's what's looking like will be best, because if we scoot it back so that this feed line can go through this frame rail, then this hits the tank. So this is what we're coming up with for now. All right, we have our AirDog mounted up. We have our fuel tank mounted up. I didn't mention this, but these fuel tank straps, brand new stainless steel from Charlie Pitcher, New Era Performance. They are phenomenal and they're very affordable. So those look really nice. We're reusing the original tank because there's not a good aftermarket tank option for these. So anyways, now we have to run our lines up to the pump, our return lines, all that stuff. We also have our sump put in. So for a sending unit, I got this unit from Fleece, and this is a drop-in unit for 12 valve Cummins trucks. So drops in. Use the original retainer ring. Actually comes with, there's the float, comes with a new gasket for the retainer ring, comes with all the fittings, so that'll be nice to have a nice new sending unit. The old ones tend to get brittle with time, and you know, so we'll run one of our return lines to here, one of our return lines to the sump, and get all of our fuel lines put in, and then the fuel system should be all buttoned up. All right, so it comes with the float. Just basically snaps right in there. Okay, let's put our O-ring in. There we go. And this is the original retainer ring that I cleaned up really nice. I have one, it's an aftermarket one, but it does not fit near as well as the original. So I just cleaned the original and that'll be really nice. There we go. So hooking up the lines, we're just gonna start with the easiest thing. First, I'm gonna go from the AirDog up to the feed line on the pump, which is 1/2 inch line. So as I'm installing this stuff, I have to give a huge shout out to Evil Energy. They have a ton of parts, especially all these push lock fittings I got for the fuel system, fuel hose, got a catch can, have my exhaust clamps that they provided, the nice style of exhaust clamp. So they sent me a ton of stuff and I really can't thank them enough. I've used their products for a long time now, but I've always just ordered them, and they reached out to me on this project and said they wanted help, so I can't thank them enough. As we're installing all the fuel system and the exhaust, most of the stuff is from Evil Energy. With the fuel system completely installed, now let's jump back to the brake lines. We did our main line down the frame rail, but we still have to do the lines from the calipers into the axle junction and then up and connect to our blocks. But before we do that, let me show you something I installed. Kind of got antsy, did it off camera, but let me show you what it looks like. So this is our tappet cover, and these are breathers in our tappet cover. And these fittings, again, I got these from Evil Energy. So I basically came out, did a loop up, and I'm gonna have the hose run down. And then I also got a catch can from Evil Energy. So I'm trying to figure out where I want to mount this catch can. It's a nice one. You can empty it just like that. It's gotta be accessible to be able to empty it. It also has a little dipstick right there. This is really nice. It'll let you know how much oil you're getting in your catch can. Brand new motor, I don't think we'll get much, but it'll be nice in case there is any, which on a high horsepower engine, there might be some anyways. So we'll run some hoses down and then loop them back up. I'm wondering if I should mount this back here on the back of the head. Probably be like that, so the hoses can come in. Or I've thought about up here near the shock tower. We'll figure that out later down the road. But these fittings and the catch can fit perfect with the build. Just that black billet look fits perfectly. All right, so let's get back here on the brake lines. Remember, we've got this back to our rear wheel anti-lock brake valve, and it comes all the way over to here. So we need to run it down to the axle and then to the junction block, and then run each line out to the calipers. The problem is we don't have any of the calipers mounted up right now. So let's mount the rear calipers up. We can mount those up. The front ones, if you recall back to a previous video, we put such big brakes on the front that we can't use our 16-inch rollers. So I borrowed some 17-inch rollers from a buddy. So we'll put the calipers on the front as well, throw those 17-inch rollers on, and then we can do all that brake line work up there as well. Alright, so on these brake hoses for these calipers, you guys should appreciate this, but I've done a little research and found out how to make this work. This is the factory Dana 61, but you can see it doesn't reach because our rotors are so much bigger, the calipers are bigger. Normally on the factory first gen one, it's way back here, and so those will reach to where they need to. So this one doesn't work. So I bought some different ones, hoping they would work. Problem is, they're too short as well. And these, I believe, were from a factory Dana 60 or a Dana 70 rear. I forget, but they don't work. So what I found, I just hopped on Rock Auto, started looking through a bunch of random, you know, vehicles and stuff. A 2002 Dodge Ram front brake hose is what this is, and it is going to fit perfect. And I can say that because I've done it on the other side already. So it's gonna go up like that. I got this little tab from Rough Stuff Specialties that will weld on somewhere in here. So it can articulate, and the line is perfect for that. But there are a few modifications. It comes with this little peg thing in here. Just grab some pliers, pull that thing out. The other thing, the orifice is just a tad bit too small for the banjo bolt. So I just got a drill bit that barely wouldn't fit in there and just gently drilled it out, and it worked. Again, I did this on the other side, so that's how I know that. And then the other thing, these holes on the tabs from Rough Stuff Specialties are built for the smaller, shorter brake lines. So I used a set bit, drilled it out just a little bit, and now it fits perfectly. So we can get these onto the calipers, then we can do our lines from our junction over here, and that'll be it for brake lines. Got this one mounted up. These they fit awesome. It's gonna look perfect too. So I'm gonna have this come to here, just like that, and then if you articulate it, got good clearance. These tabs do have a hole that you could you know, drill and tap that. I'm actually just gonna weld them on there. So let's get these welded on here, and then we'll have these mounted up. We can bring our lines right over to here. Here is my first version of this line that's got to go from here over the pumpkin over to the other caliper, but I kinked it in 2 spots, really tons of bends, and it's still not how I want it. So actually what I'm going to do, instead of coming out this way, I'm going to come right up over the top of the pumpkin, try and match that line, go right into my line holder. It'll look plenty clean. So this mount, as with many things that I have for these trucks that are very high quality, is from Metal by Charlie. It's a new design he did for the G56, so we're going to try it. I think this is the first one he's tried it on, so hopefully it works. If not, he'll make it right, but he wanted me to give it a whirl. So we got our trans mount installed into the transmission, but it is too far back. So Charlie warned me that this may happen. Again, this is kind of a prototype of his, so I'll send some pictures to him, see what he has to say, if he needs to make a new one, or if I've done something incorrect. But let's get a win, guys. Let's put the drive shafts in. Alright, the drive shafts are in. That was easy to do. So we got our front one, our rear one. They look really good. I had all the U-joints replaced, had them rebalanced, but I didn't have to change the length, and let me tell you why. So when I did the G56 swap on my truck, and you can go back and watch those videos, very good series, it was the same swap as this, an A518 automatic transmission to a G56. I had to pay almost $1,000 to get my drive shaft, especially the rear one, lengthened. But I took these in, took some measurements, dropped them off at my drive shaft guy. I went and picked them up, and he's like, I didn't have to do anything to them. They didn't need lengthened, shortened, anything. It was perfect. So I had him replace the U-joints and everything, but I couldn't figure out why. And here's the reason. We have a Dana 80 in this truck, and my truck is a Dana 70. The pinion sticks out just a little more on the Dana 80. So here is the take-home message. If you're going to do the A518 to G56 swap, save yourself the $800 to $1,000 on changing drive shafts, spend it on a Dana 80, and just throw your drive shafts back in. The more you know. Alright, we have made a ton of progress and done a ton of work in this video, but I feel like we can only check off one thing off the list so far. We have the fuel system completely installed. Now, we just got the drive shafts installed, but I found two issues that I need to address. The first one, some of you probably caught, I installed the rear drive shaft backwards. Not a huge deal, we can flip it back around. But the second issue is with the transfer case mating to the transmission. When Kevin and I were installing this, we noticed it, but we didn't know what the issue was. So let me show you. We need to pull the transfer case off because something is hitting. I don't know if it's the coupler, the shafts, one of the seals is touching the coupler, I don't know. So let's pull it off, see if we can figure that out. So I pulled the transfer case. My first hypothesis is that it's this coupler, which basically rides on the splines of the output shaft of the transmission and connects it to the input shaft of the transfer case. So in order to test this hypothesis, we're going to mount it up without that, and if it mounts flush, we'll know that's the issue. If it doesn't mount flush, it's another issue. Likely, it's the shafts hitting each other. So let's mount it up and see what we find. Got it mounted up, well, at least 3 of the 6 nuts, but they're torqued down pretty well, and I don't know if you can see that. There you go. We still have space. So this means we mounted it without the coupler. The coupler is not the issue. I don't know how to put this, but I think the tips of the shafts are touching each other. So I'm going to take a few measurements and see if I can figure out if it truly is the shafts hitting. The output shaft on the transmission does not come quite to the flange. It's just a fraction of an inch off. But the input on the transfer case sits inside this housing, so I got to figure out a way to measure how deep that sits inside there, and we can compare it against the flange of the output housing. Alright, so we'll put our straight edge right here, and 14 centimeters. Yep, 14, and then we come out here, and that is 10 and a half. So something's not right here. Let me show you my little drawing I made, see if you can make sense of this. So here we have the transmission side, the G56, so the output shaft barely is short of that flange, 1 centimeter short. Here we have the transfer case side. The input shaft sits back behind this flange. It's 14 centimeters from the edge of that flange, but the mating surface is only 10 centimeters back. So technically, what does that mean? That means we have 5 centimeters between the tips of the shafts. If my math is correct, which means the tips of the shafts are not touching. So I'm a little bit stumped here, but I do have another hypothesis. So this transfer case, you can tell it when it was completely apart, they either painted it or powder coated it, but it's nice and thick, and this flange was not sealed off. So, and you can see on the inside of this mating surface, some of it rubbed off on there. So I'm just going to take a little bit of sandpaper, take all that down to bare metal, same thing on this side, and see if that's the issue. All right, moment of truth. So we can actually stick this back on there. And comment below, what do you think? Is this going to be the issue? Okay, we've got the shaft engaged. Alright guys, so I got it torqued down and the gap is gone. So to be honest, I don't know if it was the paint on that flange or not. When Kevin and I noticed there was the gap, we didn't dare torque the nuts down all the way. So I cleaned off those surfaces, and this time I torqued the nuts down all the way because I know the shaft isn't touching. That was the fear before. So it looks like it's good. I might pull it and put a gasket in there. There's no reason to because it doesn't share any fluid in there, but just so it has something to compress against in case there is a tiny little gap. We don't want any vibrations between the two. So we'll see what I choose to do, but I think we're safe to go. I thought this was going to be a really bad scenario. I talked to the guy who built the transfer case. I talked to the guy who built the transmission. Both of them suggested take a grinder to the output shaft of the transmission and the input shaft of the transfer case and shave just a little bit off. Luckily, we don't have to do that. But I think somewhere over here, oh, right here, this is the rebuild kit for the NV4500 for Long Bid Larry. That one looks like it could fit. One of these should be it. This gasket fit perfectly. So I'm going to throw this back in and put the drive shafts back on, and we can call that buttoned up. So near the beginning of the video, when Kevin and I pulled our Diamond Eye exhaust out and realized we can't make it fit around here, so I'm going to take it to an exhaust shop. I'm going to go back on my word on that, and I'm going to try and make this Diamond Eye exhaust kit fit. One, because I like Diamond Eye and I support their product. I've got it on all my trucks. And two, because you guys like to see things that you can do as well. Now this Diamond Eye kit is not expensive, so you can purchase it and you may be able to modify it to work if you have something that's not stock on your truck. So we're gonna try and modify it a little bit, see if we can get it to fit. I may have to get a little section of the pipe made up, but we'll see what we end up with. Alright, so here's where we're at. I have actually made way more progress than I anticipated. So, you can see I'm using every resource I can. There we go. And how I know where it goes, I put the Evil Energy logo on the clamp straight up and down where I want it. We are a little short here, obviously. And then, let's see if you can see this. We're a little too high over here. This can go down just a little bit, so we are just barely off. Here's what I'm gonna do. Now this is gonna pain Steven from Holden Bros because he loves this downpipe. He was super proud of it, and I do too. I'm not gonna mess it up too much, but what I'm gonna do, I've already started unwrapping it. I'm gonna unwrap it up to this clamp, and then I'm gonna cut. I'll start with an inch, cut an inch out, tack it back together, mount it back up, because if I take some out of this slant part, it'll move it back a little bit, but more importantly, it'll move this part up a little bit. So we'll just keep getting it higher and higher, and I will end up having to, I cut this end off of here, I'll have to re-weld it on there. It's actually perfect. I just have to clock it differently. So I'm pretty surprised. We're cross our fingers, knock on wood, whatever you want to say, but I think we're gonna make this work with the Diamond Eye kit. So pretty dang cool. Okay, we got this unwrapped. This is where Steven's weld was. So I think the best thing to do is gonna be cut right before his weld, and then we'll probably come about an inch, bring it back together, just tack a few spots, mock it up, see how it is. Keep doing that till we get it right where we want it. Steven, I'm sorry about your weld. I'll make a good weld too though. All right, so I took 2 little chunks out. The first one was about 1 inch, second one was about 1/2 inch, and oh my goodness, it's perfect. So let's weld the downpipe back up and then throw it all together. So here you can see, got our space between the drive shaft and the cross member. Not bad. I think my weld looks almost as good as Steven's. So we got to pull it apart, heat wrap this down to here, put that clamp back on, and then clamp it together. Well, we did it. I can't believe we got all that done. We got the transfer case in, drive lines, the whole fuel system, fuel tank, brake lines, calipers, all that has to do with that. We got the exhaust in without having to take it to an exhaust shop, and it turned out awesome. I'm super, super happy with how it turned out. Now that we have all that done, the body can go on. So I've got the body, it's completely done with paint. Next video, let's get the body on, start assembling stuff, especially up in the engine compartment. I don't know, we got a ton to do, but this should start rolling from here. Thank you all for your support, and we'll see you guys in the next one.